Hey there, Andrew. This is a kick-ass score. It just has so much great stuff in it, and it's beautifully crafted. But having said that, I'm going to suggest some other little bits of craft that you could have, some very crafty options that you could have taken that would help out even more. Now, I was actually waiting on the laundry being done in the room next to mine, which is not completely soundproof. It's more sound resistant. So I was looking this over, and I just could not wait to start evaluating it. So you're going to hear some swishing and some spinning from the last cycle of the washer next to me, which is not the quietest machine in the world. But don't worry about that. Let's just jump into this score right away, because I've got so many fun things to say about it and observe, and it really is giving me no end of those options. So, first a few comments about scoring, and a couple of things that I noticed right off the bat, just while they're fresh in my head. Okay, and the first thing is right here, you're having your oboist slur down from a C to a B, and I'm sure that's possible, especially, a good second player should be able to do it, but it's just not very musical sounding. However, you have your English horn player playing what is in effect a written D for the oboe. So I know you want to sort of keep the integrity of the line, yep, up, 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 but I mean, why not just have the English horn player, just for the sake of argument, play this pitch, which to them would be slurring from an F to an E, written F to E, very easy for them to play, very effective note, and having the second oboe player complete their line. I think it would just work out way better, seeing as everybody's at the same volume anyways, right? You forgot to write forte right in here. Okay, so that was one thing. I just wanted to make sure that I got that down. And the other one is, I noticed that you are kind of going back and forth between, like, this is open, that's not. Here you should really have just given me a third staff of, if you're, or excuse me, a second staff. If your third trumpet is going to be using a different technique or a different mute or some other kind of thing, it also will just help with overall ease of adjusting your mock-up and other things, right? Now, I realize there's not a lot of vertical space here, and I may have scrunched things down even further when I was processing your score to get it ready. But yeah, I would just say, just in general, give your third trumpet player a third staff if you are going to be giving it some different techniques like mutes and so on. And then that just makes the notation of the other two instruments really, really simple in their own staff. Now, so we have a slight, kind of, there's the hard part is borderline. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say. So these are essentially just very quick little glissandos, right? But I mean, you do have a lot of weight in your winds, brass, and strings, and you've got a timpani stroke, right? At least on the first, on the downbeat. So, like, will this really come through? I mean, this zing, 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 zing kind of feeling. Yeah, not so sure, right? It's going to be really borderline. Now, right in here, you don't really have much of a chance, and you would be better off transcribing portions of this onto the your pizzicato instruments. Like, this note alone, the pizzicato and the cellos, will be enough to drown out this right here. So all of these left-hand notes in the harp will be doubled by cello pizzicato, will just disappear, and then you've got these pizzicato B's in your second violins. They will also overwhelm what's going on the harp here. And these E's here same things, right? So like there's only one note in there that would be audible. So you might as well just reformat this and just rewrite it. Maybe, since this player is reaching for the B, they could just go BB, right? And then right here, they could go DB. And just leave the harp out, I would say, because the harp isn't really contributing a lot. Now here, like these little glissandos, you can hear them very easily in the mock-up, and that's for a good reason. Now here, like the problem here is partially that you are having some kinds of dynamic contrasts in some instruments and not in others, right? So it's really confusing as to what the exact intentions are. Yeah, like these instruments playing the accompaniment pattern so softly, and the melody line just still screaming along, right? If everybody dropped down to piano, then your harp would have a shot. And like whenever you put brackets on a harp like this, and you've got loud things going on, forget it. The harp is gone, right? See, like this, a nice roll. And in fact, if you were to add more pitches and make it like really a huge chord, then the harp has really got a chance against this louder stuff. But, this is antithetical to being heard in, and especially considering that all of these pitches, or most of these pitches, are doubled in the harp. You've got this same B here. Here you've got two instruments playing the same E, and the strength of those E's are also going to drown out the E above in the harp, right? So this E is gone, that E is gone. And then these other notes, since that's the gentlest part of the harp, will just disappear too, right? See, so the harp just really doesn't have much of a chance in every single way that you scored it unless you adjust the dynamics, right? It's not really contributing a lot. Okay, so those were the sort of prefatory remarks that, some general scoring advice and harp advice and so on. I'm really going to have to make it clearer I thought that I'd made it pretty clear that harp is so easily overwhelmed in the 12 common errors. So I'm just going to have to make another tip about it and say, look, just harp can't compete in in the way that you want it to. Like if everybody was playing mezzo forte, then this harp would just pop right out of the picture. If right here, if everybody were playing piano, the harp would be really contributing beautifully. All right, so now let's get to the actual scoring. Now, as usual, pitch weight in the upper middle register of the piano, no pitches below middle C until near the end of the passage. That's an overall concern for this screen. So the next question is like, how much is that a concern? It really isn't, because you are adding a huger scope, right? Now, how different are these two sections? What I would argue is, like, if you are scoring with a lot of weight in the upper register, that is what the ear is going to hear, right? So if you're adding touches from below, then they have to really be strong. Now, in this case, you've done that. Like tuba and timpani working together. It's kind of strange that, it's really inconsistent. Like you've got, I would say, make it consistent. Have these players continue to work together, right? Because it's just like the dropouts don't add any subtlety. It's just, it's like, what? Oh, that's missing. What's going on here, right? So yeah, you make it fuller here, and you've got contrabassoon, and I think it is enough to differentiate between here, even though a lot of it is copy paste. You're still making it really worth the more picky listeners' time to continue, right? And now you're gonna start hearing the washing machine going a little bit more. So apologies, but I just could not stop. I could not hold back anymore. So, the overall orchestration of this is fine. You've got octave clarinets here, but they are being doubled, by arco strings. It all sort of evens out. Flutes and oboes playing the harmony of the chord doubled is very cool. So this English horn doubling with the lower clarinet is going to help to sort of tame it a little bit, and also the weight from the first trumpet on that same note. All right, and then you've got the third horn filling in the lower part of the E major chord. So I mean, it has a really nice balance to it, right? And then here you sort of up the ante with more harmonic positions of that E chord and so on, filling in what's going on in the horns and so on, adding lower emphasis. I almost wonder whether you could get away with not really adding very much going on here, like maybe these low D's don't need to be emphasized, right? So if it's just like boom da 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 yep da da boom da 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 yeah da da da, and then here you got the boom boom boom, right? And then this just seems like a distraction. Boom. But I mean, if you are going to put it in the timpani, double it with the contrabassoon and double basses and tuba and so on. Like, just make it consistent, because it just feels a little weird the way that it's. And I know what you're trying to do. You're sort of fulfilling some of the emphasis here, coming from the tambourine and other things. But or I assume that's what you're doing. Very cool too, though. Tambourine working together with the harp glissando. That's really nice too. Okay, so nice work. I really like it a lot. And bum 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 bum. That's nicely done. So the next question is the melodic development soaring quite high, and you're opting to do something similar to other parts. Here you're having the first violins go all the way up, and it's just once again I just have to say, like, do you want them to play in that screechy register, which is possible, it's totally playable, but I mean it's not very beautiful, right? If you really want to send them up to that high D. And what I would recommend is considering maybe dropping these three notes down an octave. And just, it's easy to run up to that A and then drop down to D, because the fingers will still be more or less around the same position, and so it's easy to manage some of that. So then the violins will be doubling the clarinets, and then that will fill in the illusion to the ear that the upper line is continuing on and doubling the piccolo line. This is really neat. You've got your bassoons coming in, and then that line, like, they're doubling. We've got basically a triple octave going on here, and that is giving over to the second clarinet right in there. I mean, it's just nicely crafted, like I was saying. Just a good sense of craft in here. It's excellent. So, and then, like, how is it handled here? I mean, I think to a degree the listener is going to feel the absence of the second violins, but you do it at an emphasis point in the phrase, and you pile on with the other instruments right afterwards. So I think that even though it doesn't quite follow through, I think it still works. And especially like the fact that you are adding oboe right in here, and that helps to patch the sense of the missing strings right in there. I mean, once again, nicely crafted. And then you are jumping down at different points so that does not become totally obvious, right? The first flute taking over, I would say A2 flutes here. So first flute taking over here, doubling this oboe line so the oboe can drop down, doubling the lower clarinet line and so on. So I think it works pretty well. So before moving on and talking about this section here, let's look at the whole question of the accompaniment figures, covering a wide range of pitches. It's not a concern too much because you're kind of doing these offbeats here in the in your flutes and oboes. You really are trying to emphasize this B, but you're not really doing any other kind of any kind of doubling with the wind. So I would say, like, this is a situation where, like, if I say, okay, Andrew, you can't have harp there. So what are you going to do? So if you want to throw in an instrument that can really cover these pitches, or some of them, I would say, you've got an English horn player doing nothing here, right? Bass clarinet, they could maybe be trading some things off between themselves. I wouldn't send them all the way up to this high B, which would be written F sharp. But maybe there are ways that some of your unused winds could collaborate in staccato, doubling the pizzicato here to make it a little firmer, and and just of course fixing things up, like supplying these missing notes here. But yeah, I mean, you can put in. I can't tell you that you can't have harp, but I can tell you that the harp is not going to be very audible. This is very cool in here, this harmon mute stuff. Yeah, I almost wonder if you are like planning a wah thing, like to pop the first note and then cover it really quickly and then wah out, right? That would be really cool right there. Okay, so here it's a little bit more coherent but once again the harp is kind of non-functional, right? So just rescore whatever pitches aren't being that are exclusively in the harp onto your pizzicato here, and and maybe a little bit more doubling. You've got some pitches doubled here in trumpet, which is cool, and you're dropping down to piano, and that's cool. But there's some unused winds in here that could be doubling some of these higher pitches and so on. Or you could drop this pizzicato accompaniment down an octave, as some other entries have done, and then you have broader range. Bass clarinet can cover most or all of the notes and so on. All right, now let's talk about upper middle register. Continuing on, relentless if no textural contrast. Well, you do have textural contrasts, and then you have contrasts. You're changing from like clarinet to English horn and so on, and this stuff in here, that's all cool, and then changing from the the very very emphatic arco, bum 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 bum, da 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 da, and then the tremolo and so on. That is all really really nice stuff, and of course like more harmon mute. See, like here, like there, I know that you mean harmon mute is continuing on, right? It's the last one that you use. That would be the assumption, but there could be, raised hands at rehearsals. You always want to avoid that, right? Or raised, or a question from the copyist. So you can avoid that just by having it on its own third staff. All right, and then make this a much bigger roll. Then here, marcato, this is all, just pretty much what it is. And that does lead really beautifully, like the last concern on this page, maintaining a driving staccato, to transitioning smoothly into the next passage. And it works really, really well because you set up that transition right here. That's really so nicely done, especially with the horns and trumpet, right? They just really are pushing towards what is about to happen, right? So remembering, just everybody who's reading this, just remembering that this is down a fifth, right? So this isn't an F sharp third, it's what? A B third, right? Okay. So that is leading us to part B. And once again, I feel that this is really nicely scored. I do have some reservations though, because this is something that I'm seeing in a few entries that cover part B. And that is that the triplet isn't fulfilled. It just goes da da instead of da da dum da da dum da 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 da. I mean, I think that triplet is meant to really be played all the way through by whatever instrument is leading, right? And I don't think it's enough to have this sort of shifting triplet stuff going on to kind of fulfill our notion of where the note ends. I don't think that that's enough. Now, you probably noticed in your mock-up that like some things are just not audible, and that is, that's not lying to you, right? That is actually a concern, especially when you have some of the balance the way you've got it, right? So, but that doesn't mean that it's badly scored. It just means the balance needs to be adjusted, and you need to think about a few things and so on. All right. So let's stick to the criteria. Moving onwards in my little list: contrast of color, breadth of texture, and middle register scoring. You certainly fulfill that. It kind of stays with the same instruments for a while, but you do sort of shift around, like the functions of them. So I think that totally that solves things, and also just like that's these kind of almost jungle drums right in here, and then shifting over to other things, which I'll talk about a little bit in a little bit more detail, whether how efficacious that is. And the question of maintaining differentiated roles in closely spaced melodies, overlapping accompaniment figures, highlighting inner voices. So that's where we get into the nitty-gritty of how to manage this screen, right? So you're starting off really, really well. I really love this, so it just really, this is almost a solo, right? I mean, it isn't, but it is, it has soloistic kind of potential. So I would say easily throw in like some a bit of nuance in there, like maybe a little bit of a flush, right? Or maybe here just like really bring out the what's going on. So you're giving these guys hairpins. Why aren't you giving them to the bassoon, right? That is really what's going to stick in people's minds, right? And there's no suppressing the sound of the winds here when you're doubling the first, right? And so this person also kind of needs a little help. I would say don't do this like the balance is off here, right? I know what you want here. You want the sound of this tremolo to kind of creep in, right? Now, this is interesting. So you have 2/16. Now, if you were intending this to all be tremolo 16ths, then this should be a single beam, not a double beam. So at this point, it behaves also in the mock-up like just like an unmeasured tremolo, right? But if you really intend to be this should just be a single beam, because it's like you're basically taking this beam here, this secondary beam, and you're turning it into just a tremolo beam, right? So it's one beam under the greater beam. All right. So we've got that coming in. We've got the concern about the high interjecting notes sounding too glaringly repetitive. And this is really clever, what you do. Like you've got the button, pow, da 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 dun. All right, so that sounds perfectly legitimate. And then, like the next high interjecting note comes at the end of this glissando, right? And that is a really great way of freshening it up, right? And then you're coming back from the glissando, so that really you're leading to it and you're coming back from it. You're changing the scoring of it, so it isn't just like pizzicato again and so on, and flutes. And that is so neat. And you also keep this really simple bum 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 with the piccolo, just like adding some overtones above. That's really, really cool. Now, I don't know. I know that you just gave us some dynamics before, but I kind of feel their lack here at the beginning of the rehearsal mark. But that's all right. All right, now, boop bum 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 bum. So yeah, there's a lot of dynamic mixing in here. I kind of feel that like I'd almost prefer that everything was kind of soft with nuance, right? Rather than kind of having some parts loud, some parts soft, some parts extra soft, right? I mean, I just feel that there's a lot going on here, and the end result is not necessarily balancing things, right? Like, because it's kind of hard if you listen to the mock-up, it's kind of hard to hear what's going. It's kind of hard to hear what's going on in here. You know, and then right in here, the bassoons like almost completely disappear. All right, so there is just something wrong with the approach, the whole dynamic approach right in here. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not so convinced by the strings dropping out here, right? And these other instruments coming in. Just, I mean, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to shift from one tone color to the other. I get that, right? Yeah. I think that my problem is like crescendo to what, right? I mean, I think that it's like we're crescendoing into the downbeat of a new section, right? A new 8-bar section, right? So I think that we kind of need to know where we're going here, right? So if it's all mezzo forte or like what's the dynamic, and then of course this right in here, yada-dum. I think da on this really really low note is I think that's kind of tough on the English horn player. I think da da is easier. Like if you're gonna have them playing their low B, which, you know, sounding E below middle C, right? Right. So this right in here, beautifully aggressive. I love it. And then, but like here we end up with a missing triplet, right? So like, how easy is it for the horn player to go ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum? It's real easy. Actually, you could have like two horns here. You could have your first player going da, and then you could have your second player playing the same first two notes and then finishing the triplet underneath it. Da 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 da, and you end up with that really cool written B fifth sounding E fifth. Yeah, I mean, I just feel it like it just needs a little bit of work right in here. And then you've got this one kind of push right here. Da, 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 bum. And there isn't any flex towards this louder note, right? And I think you can put some in here. Put some crescendo. Da, 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 bum, ba-dum. I feel it needs to breathe more, right? But the approach is pretty good. It just the balance is a little wacky. And the same thing here. Yeah. I'd say in all parts, right? Not just like you've got you do have crescendo marks over your first horn, but yeah, but it just needs could also be in the melody and the subsidiary parts and so on. And then we get to here, I just feel it becomes things are just a little out of kilter as well. Da-da. So maybe put the accent back, right? This is supposed to be accented. Ta ta. And I think the bassoonists have absolutely zero problem playing triplets here. Ta 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 ta. Right, I think that would work fine. A little trickier for the English horn player to go bum, like slur down to their lowest note. I think that's just a little weird, right? This would be better off. I mean, you can leave it the way that it is, and then maybe have second clarinet coming in and doubling that. They can go down to their low E with much fewer problems, right? But I still think you need to fulfill that triplet right in there. Yeah, but it's so cool. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is badly scored. I'm just saying that you need to adjust a few things that have to do with gesture and so on. The idea of using the oboe right in here is just brilliant. I just really love it. I think that works all the way through this section, especially as an answer to the trumpet that came before. And that takes us to this part right in here. And it's neat the way that you have the clarinet tracing across all of the notes that are going to be held by other instruments, right? That is a very neat idea. I think that some notes still have to be held. Like I think that like you could easily go D and then tie and turn it into like a double stop, right? You could easily do that here. And then I'm sort of thinking to myself, B flat, G sharp, the D string. You see, that would work as well. So I think it sort of needs to hang on as it goes up. I think it's not enough just to go bottom. I think it has to be da, and then the top thing coming in at the same time, and then you've got your harp glissando. And this is neat that you are backing off, right? And so this is really fulfilling that concern that I've got for the beginning of the C section, convincing all-argando expansion, smooth release into bar 49. And I think that you really accomplish that by backing off. I think that these are the right instruments to use. Lower winds, the lower strings, and then the upper strings coming in here, coming out of these very soft, heavy brass right in here. I think that that's just a nice balance. And I think it's also wise that you keep horns out of it, because they kind of tend to swallow a lot of what's going on in these kinds of textures, right? Okay, so now we get to this section here. So you're saying, very much more slowness, right? But like the whole point here was like not just più lento, but like it's twice as slow, right? But a little more, right? So he's not saying, look, I just want you to go really slow here. He's saying he wants things to be doubly slow, but just a little faster than doubly slow, right? So it's almost as if you're kind of taking the yum bum 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 bum, and then going ya da ba da 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 yeah, but it's just like it's done. It's like it's just reinterpreting the note values in a sense, right? So and it's actually at this point it is actually a kind of piumoso, right? That's just like rather than più lento. I know I'm not really describing this all that well. However, I will say one thing is that considering the approach that you took here, despite some things that are out of balance, which I'll talk about in a bit, I don't think that like at the faster tempo you'd be able to get this measured very well, right? And I think, by the way, these should be, before I forget to mention this, I think these should have tenuto marks over them. Pianissimo, yes, but like tenuto, just look like rather than dun 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 dun. I think works a whole lot better. Okay, so the problem was, of course, to interpret this very, very pianistic left hand and like try to make it feel natural as a orchestral accompaniment, and trying to keep it from becoming too regular was what was the task that I set for myself. Careful treatment of the melodic voice to make it feel authentic to the composer's style. So I really love when we get into section C, because we're really getting down into the nitty-gritty of several key points. And I think that, like in this kind of declamatory scoring, right, like well sung, right, very expressive, then clarinet is great, but I think that you can be more generous with the nuances. Right, shouldn't we have a little crescendo diminuendo in here? Then maybe crescendo diminuendo. And we do the same thing. Right, it just seems like completely blank. It's like, it's like a sentence, like an actor who's just like saying Stella, or I could have been a contender instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it, Charlie. Right? That's not what you want from your actors in this script. Right? You want them to really like lean into certain phrases and stuff. It's not enough just to take what is in the piano score. Bum, 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 da, da, da. We've got to add more stuff, right? Some more juice. All right. Okay. This is really cool. I really like the bum 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 bum. That's really, really neat. The kind of offbeat thing. I think that works really beautifully alongside the accompaniment style. That's great. And then Right here, this should be notated as a chord with a little roll on it, right? Rather than just the way that this is scored is just it's unnecessarily fiddly, right? Just write in a chord with a little roll. The player will work it right into the pattern, just exactly the way you want them to. All right, so this is 2. Who's this? 4, right? Okay, and that's absolutely perfect. Second player just holding down a note. Fourth player comes in holding down a note, right? That's what they're there for. And the first player going bam right at the end. You say it was like exactly right. Okay, now here's the problem: is this really lacks vitality right in here, and part of it is because everything is so staticky, right? Like if you look at the piano score, it's right. You just you just had this big kind of sing, and then when the guy gets to the end, he's like complaining about his miserable life and his girlfriend who cheats on him and his car just broke, and then and then all the dancers do their little thing. Ha ha! That was really fun to listen to somebody else's problems, and now. The next singer comes in and says, well, you think you got it bad. I've had this bad knee for 5 years and my boss won't give me a raise. And, your wife cheats. Well, mine left me, and once again, where's if this is declamatory, right, where's the nuance? I love the rip upwards, by the way. Just really, you just have to really say something, right? Just really make it speak out. Okay, but back to this, the problem right in here. I just feel like there's, you've got this kind of background color and stuff like that, and it, the horn will tend to kind of overwhelm the right in here. It's just, I feel like if this is going to be piano, this should be piano, this should be pianissimo, right? And then you got a balance. But, right in here, I just feel like there's a kind of a lack of vitality because this is so soft and there's no oomph to it, right? There's here you're giving your static parts a little, swell of a hairpin, and right in here they're coming in mezzo forte, but it just has almost nothing going on there, right? And then here you don't even have a crescendo or anything, right? It just continues on, and this is soft. So yeah, I think you need to maybe rethink a few things about the balance in there. But this is really neat, like this rip up, rip down. And this is so cool, this low bass clarinet note. Yeah. And, then you're continuing on with the harp. So I'm just wondering if there's some way to, rethink, could the harp do something else here? Something based on this, but, maybe an octave higher? Because you're really jumping up with your strings. They're going up more than an octave. So why can't the harp, where it's a little bit more audible? Or could it start going, playing sixteenths, which it really can do easily, and working it into a pattern that is kind of more glistening, rather than just the same pace, right? And then cool harmon mute without stem. If your third player is already playing that mute, here's a situation where if the third player is the guy with the harmon mute, then even though they're not the first player, maybe they can do that. On the other hand, the first player is the first player, and they should be getting all the juicy solos, right? This is kind of interesting. Forte crescendo clarinet, right? So you're continuing on with the clarinet as the voice, but with soft trumpet an octave below. And I see what you're doing here. You're trying to kind of inform the clarinet voice with the overtones from the trumpet below. But the person who really works great with that kind of stuff is the oboe, right? The oboe has a tendency to form this beautiful balance between trumpet below, especially muted trumpet below, and all of its weird, all the weird different mutes. The oboe tends to make sense of them. So, this is the way that this scored here. It'll be kind of more of a shimmering but slightly cold sound. with the way that, especially when you're having like the horn come in here yet an octave lower, right? So I just say use caution, right? Because the proper there's nothing proper about it, but the players who really work in sync between muted trumpet going to the wind section is usually like oboe, English horn for Debussy. All right, and then you've got this little ding, ding, ding. So why couldn't the harp player also be playing those? Ding, 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 ding. You know what I mean? Like they could do that all day long. And then so here we're getting to the section where I have written in my notes. If I can just get my laptop to wake up. Oh, come on. Okay, managing the sense of restraint leading to a burst of energy, right? And I love this little response here. But, once again, I mean, it's just constantly clarinet all the way through. Is there some way that we could get a little relief? Maybe this could be English horn, right? And piccolo. Just a beautiful, kind of spooky kind of a sound. Playing octaves or 2 octaves apart. So it's like more of a comment, and rather than one guy singing all the time and these other people coming in to support them, it's just more contrasting between the 2 different flavors. And when we're getting to this part that's like more emphatic, it's almost as if like answering from below. Like here you have this sudden strengthening. The dynamics are strange. Like it's forte crescendo, then suddenly mezzo forte trumpet, right? And at this point, the trumpet is going to stand out, and the clarinet is going to be less important. So I know that maybe that's what you intend on doing here, but it's just kind of strange. I'm just thinking like maybe seek more contrasts, maybe more jumping between different flavors of melodic texture is what I would possibly suggest. Okay, and then leading to a burst of energy. Yeah, yeah, and this writing here is very cool. I love the octave clarinets. I love the violas and the first violins working together. It just is going to have a cool, direct, almost cutting sound. That is just really awesome. But like, why couldn't this finish with the second clarinet, or maybe even better bass clarinet coming in, right? Because I just really feel that like letting go of this. I mean, I know you're trying to telescope things right in here, but I feel that it just is kind of weakening the viola line unnecessarily. And it's interesting. Like right in here, you keep this very, very simple, right? Like there's this big burst of color from the brass, and then you suddenly choose to back off here rather than later on. And that's really nice. It sets up your solo cello way better. So I would say, like, in order to make this solo cello more potent, just lessening the interference from other players right in here. But that still wouldn't hurt anything to have a little bit of doubling from clarinets, and just like on the viola line, and then just like really bring down the volume when you get to here in your clarinets. And then, yes, answered by solo violin. That's all cool. And then this is so neat, but what I would caution about is that this is the kind of thing where everybody is going to have to rely on the conductor, right? Because like you have so many people playing. You've got 42 people playing in the string section, right? 16 firsts, 14 seconds, 12 violas, and then on top of that, you've got A2 clarinets below and English horn above, right? It almost feels a little weak on top, as if like you could have added maybe like an oboe to that or something like that, just to kind of even out the weight. But it's all right. You don't have to change it. All right, so like the conductor is really going to want to manage this and just really make it, otherwise you get dun 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 dun, right? And especially at that kind of slower tempo that you've chosen, right? Yeah, you're just probably going to find if this does get performed or something that the conductor will try to sort of speed this up the way that it is done in like with Alicia de la Rocha, who really is the great. Let's face it, she's the great exponent of this work. Although I really love the version that other pianist Peter Bradley Fulgoni did and left on IMSLP. I mean, to some respects, he's modeling some of his interpretation on hers, but he's got his own things to say in it too, which I find really fascinating. So all the same, it's a section where there will be a certain kind of attitude to the tempo that will sort of pull and push. It'll kind of squeeze and release, right? There will be, and that may take a little bit of woodshedding. Now you've got to, and here, like you brought the tempo back really fast and so on. So, I mean, so cool too. Like I really love the way that you work this all together. English horn doubling with trumpet, and then you've got the clarinets below, and you got the strings, and you've got staccato in here. I think you could actually just mark, right? I don't think that would hurt anything. Yeah, and this all works fine. Yeah, that's neat. The little tweets from above, very bird-like. Alrighty, so I'll just leave it at that. Really compelling score, Andrew. And once again, like the overall concepts that you've got in here, your vision for the orchestration is very powerful. So I'm just suggesting, like, how could you perfect it a little bit, or how could you get it more ready for a performance, right? So these are just some suggestion and also some perspective from like what I feel is workable and what isn't, right? So a lot of times you can have like the most fantastic idea, and it is actually can be like genius orchestration, but like, is it workable for the orchestra, right? So I try not to discount things and take somebody's beautiful piece of work and say, oh, that's just chuck that in the trash, it'll never work. Okay, well, the thing is like, what about it is beautiful that doesn't work, but it should work, right? Like, how can we make that work? How can we make that idea work rather than just throwing everything out? And that is the difference, my friends, between feedback that builds on somebody's strengths and builds on somebody's creations, and devastating criticism that attempts to belittle the person who has put their work out there for feedback, right? And that is like what I aim for in my analysis of people's work. And that is whether I am analyzing somebody who has not yet made it as a pro, or somebody who just is doing it for fun. And it's the same thing when I am analyzing somebody who is a pro or was a great composer, but maybe made a mistake in their score that everybody sort of changes around. For instance, the quintuple pianissimo bassoon line in the Sixth Symphony of Tchaikovsky, which is often played on bass clarinet, just to kind of even out the tone color and the kind of whisper soft playing, which is really not possible for bassoon in that register. So, it's just things like that. It's like there's no sense going in there and myself being I'm who am I really? I'm a professional orchestrator and an orchestration coach, and I love what I'm doing, and I don't consider myself to be the orchestration god of the universe by any means, right? So who am I to try to say somebody is good or bad? All I can say is how I think your score can get stronger, right? So having said all that blather, I want to thank you very much, Andrew, for sending me such a great score and for doing so much work on it. and also for supporting me and being part of the Orchestration Online community, and for everybody out there supporting on Patreon. And even if you're not, you're just like maybe like a subscriber to the website newsletter or subscriber here on YouTube, member of the Facebook community, I just really appreciate everybody coming together and helping each other out with comments, with feedback. So, if anybody wants to thank me for this, for what I'm doing, go make a comment on somebody else's video. That is the biggest thanks you could give me. And by the way, I'm reading all of the comments people are leaving on each other's videos, and I have yet to run into one that was unfair or harsh, right? So I really appreciate that as well. So thank you very much, Andrew. Thanks all. And now I think I'm going to go evaluate another score.